to the Review Diaries. I'm your host, Jackie Moore, and in today's episode, we are going to be recapping Saltburn. I've been meaning to recap this movie for literally, honestly, this movie is one of the main reasons why I probably decided to make a podcast, because I just think it's so fucking insane. I'm so happy I live in the same lifetime as a movie like this, because it's just so out of pocket that it's genius. And I don't know why I did not start with this movie, but I think I just wanted to gain my confidence a little bit before I recap this, because I just love it so much, even though it's so fucked up and so twisted. But anyway, so Saltburn is a 2023 drama film starring Barry Keoghan and Jacob Elordi. Barry Keoghan's character Oliver and Jacob Elordi's character Felix are both students at Oxford College in 2006, which is when this takes place. And so Oliver is the embodiment of an introvert, an outsider. He literally arrives at Oxford and is immediately just made fun of for wearing an Oxford jacket and scarf by a guy who is actually Felix's cousin, Farley. So Oliver is also quite the observer of the character. Even when he is in his dorm room, he is constantly just people watching from his window, and that is a recurring theme with his character, that he is just always just watching everybody and everything that is going on around him. He goes to the dining hall, which is very packed with students, and manages to find an empty seat and sits across a student named Michael Gravy, who is played by Ewan Mitchell, who plays Aemon Targaryen in House of the Dragon. And I did not immediately recognize him, because obviously if you've seen House of the Dragon, you know Targaryen hair and the beautiful wig that he wears, and obviously his little eye patch and his scarred eye. But yeah, I was so I was very excited to see him in this film. So they begin talking, and it's a bit of a weird conversation, because Michael says that he is just very good at math, and he's just a little bit of an oddball of a character. But he asks Oliver to give him this math equation so he can solve. And so Oliver doesn't immediately do so, and so Michael literally yells at him to give him a sum. He's give me a sum, then. I was oh god. And no one reacts too, which I thought was odd. No one around them's what the fuck. But anyway, so Oliver gives him a multiplication, which he solves. So after this, Oliver has these meetings. I don't know if they're classes, but it's just weird because it's just two students, but it's literally him and Felix's cousin Farley, where they discuss essays that they have written. But this is the moment where we notice that him and Farley don't immediately get off to the best start. On his way to the library, Oliver notices Felix has a flat tire on his bike and offers his bike to him so he can get to class. And Felix is oh my god, that's so kind. Are you serious right now? And he asks his name, and he's Oliver, I love you, thank you so much, you're a lifesaver. He even kisses his cheek or head or something, and as he is leaving with Oliver's bike. And so at the local bar or pub, as they call it, Felix calls Oliver over and introduces him to his friends, calls him his hero, and offers him a drink. And he leaves Michael behind, who he was sitting with earlier having a drink. So everyone in the group kind of starts drinking heavily, and so does Oliver, to kind of I guess try and fit in with everybody. And Farley is also at the table, and so they're kind of throwing jabs at each other. And Farley seemingly implies that Oliver doesn't have enough money to buy the table a round of drinks, but Felix gives him the money to help him buy the drinks. And so after this, we see a montage of Oliver hanging out with Felix and his friends, and occasionally we see Farley in the background just kind of watching Oliver. Farley has basically grown up with Felix's family, basically like a brother, and his family even paid for his like education because his mother doesn't have money and she's like on drugs or something. It's like something weird like that. And so Oliver tells Felix that he doesn't have any siblings and that he doesn't really see his parents much because they have like mental health and addiction problems, and they also even kind of deal on the side. And so Felix is just compassionate with Oliver and is supportive and calls him like an inspiration. So just kind of really trying to be like a good friend to him. And so afterwards we see Michael, who pulls Oliver aside in the library, where he says that he looks different and that Felix will get bored of him and calls him a bootlicker. So after this, we see how Felix's friends and girls that he is kind of hooking up with are telling Felix that no one really wants to hang out with Oliver, that he's like weird and like the awkward scholarship kid. And all of this is literally going on with Oliver literally 2 feet behind Felix and this girl, by the way. Like, y'all didn't like feel him walking up behind you, but anyway. So this is kind of like the beginning where we see Oliver's obsession with Felix, where he's kind of like even a peeping Tom at times, and he sees Felix having sex with a girl in his dorm room through the window. And in Felix's dorm, like another day after this, Oliver is hanging out with him, and he makes a comment about how Felix's room is disgusting and that because he's rich, he can afford to like not clean up after himself. So Felix is like, literally, stop, I'll do it later, I'm just stressed with exams, it's like so hot in this room. And he doesn't finish his sentence, but he basically is about to say to Oliver that he's like driving him insane. So he kind of dismisses Oliver and tells him that he'll just call him later, but he doesn't. So afterwards we see Oliver looking for Felix at the bar, and Felix is hanging out with all of his friends without him. So the next morning, Oliver receives a call from his mom, and we don't see what she says, but then we go to Felix's room, and Oliver is crying, and he tells him that his father died. So again, we see Felix kind of being a supportive friend to Oliver, even though he had kind of been blowing him off at this point. But they are now done with exams and everyone is going to a ball. So Farley makes a comment about Oliver being almost passing because he rented a tux and his sleeves are like too long and the quality is like not all that great for the tux. So Felix shows up after and takes Oliver away and says that his family has a tradition where when someone dies, they write their name on a rock and throw it into a body of water. So they do that for Oliver's dad. And Felix asks Oliver if he is going to go home for the summer, but he says that he will most likely never go home, that he can't stand like the mess and the thought of taking care of his mother. So Felix offers to take Oliver with him home to Saltburn, which is like his massive like estate or castle that he lives in. And so Oliver arrives at Saltburn, and the main butler, Duncan, tells him that he arrived too early because the gates weren't even open and that they were going to send somebody to pick him up. So the butler, Duncan, is like spooky, y'all. Like, he just gives vampire realness. Like, he just knows all the secrets of this house. He's always like kind of lurking in the corners, and he just, he's just scary. But Felix rescues Oliver from Duncan to give him kind of like the tour of the house, and we just see that this house literally just screams like money and wealth. It's like obscene. So everything is just decorated to like the max with the most expensive stuff, just tons of old relics and books and just opulence everywhere. It's like a freaking museum. But Felix and Oliver will be sharing a bathroom because the house is too big, and the other bathroom that is like closer is like just so far away for Oliver to walk like all that way. It's just ridiculous for him to be walking that far for a wee, as they say. And so we have the iconic Rosamund Pike as Felix's mother, and another icon, Carrie Mulligan, as their family friend Pamela, who has been staying with them because she has a drug problem. While they are all waiting for Oliver to arrive, they're gossiping about Oliver and his situation with his parents, and then he comes into the room and his mother says that he has beautiful eyes, and she just had me dying. She just has so many iconic lines in this film where she was like, Oliver, you must know that I have a phobia of ugly people. Like, what? But she just keeps making like the most bizarre comments, and she just had me like in tears. And Felix is like to the point where he's like, literally stop, you're being so rude. And she is just unfazed. She don't give a fuck. She just does not care at all. And so at breakfast the next morning, I don't know how many people noticed this, but it's a very, very small moment where they're talking about a poet and how this poet had a doppelganger. And it's a shot of Venetia, who is Felix's sister. So like, if you know like the rule of thirds, it's like a frame is split into 3, and each third, like, you're supposed to set up something like in the shot. So in the first third we have Venetia, then the second third is like the window. I believe that's how it's set up. And so we have Venetia and then the window, and at the table we see Felix wearing this like pink shirt, but Venetia is talking about this doppelganger for this poet, and we see Felix walk by the window in the pink shirt while he is literally like sitting right next to Venetia, which I thought was just genius. But also another moment that I thought was amazing is everyone is having eggs with their breakfast, and they ask Oliver how he likes his eggs, so they bring him to him. I think he said like over easy or like something, and he says the eggs are runny, and the butler Duncan has to take the eggs back. And in the grand scheme of things, it's just like a moment that's just like with everything that happens, because he's like, you don't know how to make my eggs the way I like them. And he's just like a nobody, and he like sends the eggs back. Like, just genius. So kind of as the summer goes on, we see how Oliver is starting to fit in with Felix's family and the efforts that he is going through to kind of fit in, like learning what artists they like and facts about them, kind of playing the same sports as them. And even though the butler Duncan does not trust Oliver like at all. And so now we kind of start getting into like the territory of the film, which is like a little bit weird. And so it's late at night, and Oliver hears like moaning in the bathroom, and it's the one that he shares with Felix. So he goes and kind of like peers in and sees that Felix is in the bathtub and he is pleasuring himself. And so Felix is out of the tub, and then it's Oliver washing his teeth, and Felix says good night. So Oliver goes into the tub, and if you've seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But he starts like slurping the bath water, and I'm talking like all the way down like the drain. Like his tongue is like literally down there, laying his face like in the tub, like on the floor, with Felix's like bodily fluid remains in the tub. And it's just with the leftover water in there, it's just, oh my god, it's just like, who comes up with this kind of stuff? That's literally like, oh god, it's just disgusting, and I love it. So to me, the most iconic scene, because it just lives in my head rent free, is a scene where we see Felix's mother talking outside with Oliver about how she was once a lesbian for a while, and that it was just too wet for her in the end, and that men were just so lovely and dry. The delivery of that line literally deserves like an Oscar. Like, Rosamund Pike is just, I thought she was amazing as like Amy Dunn, and I'm just like, no. incredible. But this is where I guess Oliver's like master plan really kind of starts kicking in at this point, where he's kind of starting to plant seeds into everyone's heads about the rest of the group, and starting with their friend Pamela and how she might just not be like well at all. But after this, we see Oliver watching Venetia in the garden. So he goes to meet her where she is in the garden, and he starts by trying to manipulate her by telling her that she needs to eat because she hasn't been eating that much, and she agrees, and he kneels down in front of her and starts pleasuring her, and she tells him that she is on her period, but he's like, I don't care. He puts his like fingers in her mouth, and it's like covered in blood. He goes down on her too, and he's just nah. And while this is happening, Farley is actually watching them from the window. And so the next morning at breakfast, Felix's mother suggests that they throw a party for Oliver's birthday, and Oliver notices how Felix is kind of ignoring him and just being cold with him a little bit. And so this kind of worries Oliver, so he tries to find Felix to try and talk to him. And he says that it looks bad that he is trying to get with Venetia when they are friends, but Oliver says that Venetia is the one that came on to him and kissed him, and that what Farley told Felix about them being all over each other was a lie, and that he didn't say anything to protect Venetia and not embarrass her, and that he didn't think it was necessary. So Felix says it's like a relief, and that thankfully it didn't turn into like an Eddie thing, which was an old friend of Felix who had a thing for Venetia that basically ruined their friendship. And so Oliver hears Felix and Farley arguing over how Farley feels about them throwing Oliver a party when his mother can barely make ends meet. So Felix says that they just haven't wanted to enable her by helping her financially, and Farley makes a comment about their footmen who are people of color like Farley, but Felix says that they're a family and that race has nothing to do with it, so that they have been really kind of more than generous with Farley, and that maybe they've done all that they can with him. So at dinner, Venetia says that Oliver is just another one of Felix's toys, since he is doing what Felix wants by staying away from her. And Farley tries to embarrass Oliver while everyone is doing karaoke by having him sing a song about loving people who pay his rent and buy him things. So Oliver threatens him, and then the next morning, Farley is kicked out of Saltburn under the impression that he stole something from the house. And so it is now Oliver's birthday, and Felix surprises him by taking him to his parents' home, and Felix says that his mother called last week and that he has been ignoring her calls. So Oliver kind of starts panicking that his plan is just going to literally fall apart. So at this moment, we don't know the truth, but basically Oliver has been lying this entire time about his family. Not like that is surprising, but his dad is not dead, and neither one of his parents are addicts. And their house is very nice, and unlike the picture that he painted to Felix, and at first glance, his mother is clearly not an addict. So Felix is obviously like, what the fuck is going on? So he also lied and said that he was the only child, but he has sisters that he never told Felix about, and Felix is like, you told me you were an only child. And his mom says that he always did well in school and found it difficult to make friends, and that he is a top student at Oxford. And Felix is like, oh, you're so modest, I didn't even know you were on the rowing team also. So back at Saltburn, Felix says that it is best that Oliver goes home after his party, and he calls him a liar and said that it was weird that he lied, which is true. I mean, Oliver says that he just wanted to be his friend, but Felix was never really the type of guy to judge him if he had money or not. He was honestly just always so freaking nice to him and supportive little golden retriever, and just justice for Felix especially, and his family too, because even though his family were just weird, they weren't necessarily bad people. So yeah, it just kind of sucks. And so at the party, Oliver keeps trying to talk to Felix, but Felix keeps blowing him off, telling him to fuck off, and Farley is back at the party and in disguise, and Farley taunts Oliver, saying that he basically is going to have to relive this summer for the rest of his life since this kind of lifestyle is unattainable to him. So Felix sneaks off with a girl into the maze that they have, as we all do. And Oliver follows him in there, and Felix is hooking up with this girl as Oliver is literally just standing there watching. Literally so creepy. But he calls Felix over, and Felix is like, literally, get away from me, like, stop. And Oliver is like, you're the only friend I've ever had. You don't understand how much I love you. I'm still the same person. Does this not prove, like, how good of a friend I am? Like, you don't understand. And it does not go well. And so the next morning, Oliver is woken up to screaming, and everyone is screaming for Felix because they can't find him. And so they're all literally looking everywhere for him, and even in the water that they have, like a little pond. But his mother finds him in the maze, collapsed with a bottle of alcohol that he was drinking next to him that had been, like, I guess poisoned or laced with drugs. So his dad comes up to him, and it's just so sad because he's, like, clearly in shock of seeing his son, like, dead. Because he's like, oh, like, darling boy, help me get him inside. He just needs to go inside to be warmed up. Like, where's your sweater? Like, oh, just the worst. It's just, ugh. Just made me feel so icky. Oh, I was just watching it. I was like, oh, God. But just quite an uncomfortable scene with the family at the dinner table trying to pretend like nothing is going on while the police are outside trying to find their way out of the maze because they can't, and they're getting lost because they're just trying to take Felix's body out of Saltburn to, like, I guess the morgue. But Duncan asks for permission to close the curtains since the police are going to walk by with the body, like, just roll it by there. And he can't close the curtains, but they all keep trying to eat and drink while they're wheeling Felix's body by. And Farley asks to be excused, but Felix's dad yells at him and is like, literally sit down and shut up and eat the pie. So Oliver makes a comment about the pie being delicious, and Farley is like, literally, what the fuck are you doing here? Like, you're not family, and like, does no one find this weird? And so Oliver has the gall to accuse Farley of doing drugs, so they send Duncan to search his room and ask him to leave. And it is now Felix's funeral, so they are burying him, and they do the tradition with the rock and his name, like Felix had told Oliver when they were at Oxford. So undoubtedly, this is the most, like, uncomfortable scene in the film. Like, literally the first time I saw it, I was like, what the fuck am I watching? But it's Oliver at the plot where Felix is buried, and he literally lays down on top of the plot to cry for a bit, and then he starts undressing himself and literally is like simulating like sex and like is humping the plot where Felix is buried. It's just like so disgusting and disrespectful. Like, Felix's body is literally there, and I honestly was just shocked that they would put this in, but it just speaks to his, like, psyche and his state of mind where he either has, like, no respect for Felix or his obsession with him has just reached another level, and it's like as if killing him is not enough, but he also has to, like, degrade his, like, resting sites too. It's just But after this, Venetia is in the bathtub, and Oliver walks in, and she tells him that she saw him crying in the church, and that she realized how Oliver had only known Felix for like 6 months, and that he also really has nothing to do with him and his family, and insinuates that she has caught on to his scheme since she calls him a moth because he seems to be like quiet and harmless, but he's always trying to insert himself into things. So Oliver is wearing Felix's aftershave because she smells it and she calls him a freak. And then we see a shot of Venetia dead in the tub. The water just completely red, basically just turned red because of the blood. Felix's dad asks Oliver how long he plans on staying because he doesn't think that him staying is good for his wife or anyone else, really. But Oliver insists on staying, saying that he only wants to do what is best for Felix's mother, and that he doesn't think him leaving is what is best for her. So Felix's father takes out his checkbook to try and bribe him into leaving, and Oliver leaves, and then we see that some time has passed since his time in Saltburn, and he sees in the paper that Felix's dad has died, and simultaneously Felix's mother sees Oliver in a cafe, and she doesn't live in Saltburn anymore, even though they still own it. So they basically catch up with one another, and she asks him to stay with her at Saltburn because even though she doesn't live there anymore, they still own it. So we are now in the present, and we see that Oliver has been having a conversation like throughout the film with someone who turns out to be Felix's mother, who is on a ventilator. And she has left Saltburn to Oliver after various accidents that she had. So now we see how kind of everything has unfolded since the beginning. And so Oliver was the one that put the nail in Felix's tire, and he clearly had the money when he was in the bar, but he planned to also meet Felix's mother somehow at the cafe and lied about Farley stealing. Not like that's surprising. He also planted razor blades for Venetia to murder herself, and he laced Felix's alcohol bottle either with poison or drugs. And he says that he loved Felix but sometimes hated him too, and all of them. So she is literally like on a ventilator, but he gets on top of her and he yanks the ventilator like tube out of her so she'll die. And so Saltburn is now his since everyone else has died, and we see a scene of her before she dies signing some papers. And so the final scene of the film is Oliver dancing naked around Saltburn to Murder on the Dance Floor. So yeah, it's just, oh, I don't know, dude. Like, whoever wrote this script, I want to know where your brain was, because whoa. It's crazy. It's just, oh. Because my entire thing with how everything happened is like, there has to be a reason behind it, you know, why he like killed everybody. Because, I mean, I think in the beginning it was very clear that he was like in love or obsessed with Felix. Like that's very like apparent and clear. But as far as like when he actually goes to Saltburn and meets his family and everything, I wish his motive was more clear as to like why he did what he did, because it's either that his obsession with Felix got too much, or it's like the point where it's like, I have him or no one will, but at the same time it's like, what about like his family? So I think it was like obsession and infatuation in the beginning, but then maybe like just with the lies of like his family and everything, maybe him seeing that this lifestyle that they had was just so different from like what he was used to. Maybe it like made him like do some crazy stuff and he was just jealous of it. Maybe he wanted like that kind of lifestyle. But I mean, even like when they're at the party and they're singing him happy birthday, there's like literally hundreds of people, and they're like, we literally don't even know this person's name, but we're just here. It's like, that's what you want? Like, for people to just like want you because you have money, not because they like actually care about you? I don't know. And even like with his parents, like they just seemed like sweet people. They were like super supportive. Felix was like super supportive of him. Even like when they were like still friends, he just always was like there for him. Even, I mean, even though he had like buku's amount of money, he just seemed like a very like pretty like honestly down to earth, not down to earth really, but like, you know, he just seemed nice. He didn't seem like he was, I don't know, he just seemed like a little frat boy that liked to have sex with girls a lot. I don't know, it just, his motives were not super clear to me, and I wish that were explained a little bit more in the film. I don't know, I wanted to know why. Because, I don't know. Because even, like, if it were, like, love and infatuation, like, he never really did anything to, like, show Felix, like, that he wanted him romantically. Like, he never even, like, tried to kiss him. Like, none of that stuff. I don't know. It just, I don't know. Everything else was, like, so good. And I just wish the motives were more clear as to, like, why he did everything. Like, why murder the fucking family? It's like, you literally... And also, he, like, took the money, like, from the dad, too. It's like, you already took this man's money and then you take his house, too. Like, ugh. Or maybe he's just, like, fucking crazy. I don't know. It does... Maybe I'm just overthinking it, like, way too much and he's just, like, crazy. Which could be very true. I don't know. I think money... I guess money makes people do crazy things. I don't know. I don't know. But, yeah. Overall... It's just so good, and it's just shot beautifully. I think that's like my main thing with everything. It's just shot beautifully, and acting is so good. Barry Keoghan and Jacob Elordi, like, obviously he's so good, and everyone so good, and plot really good, solid. And you know what movie it like gave like the vibes? If you've seen it, Riot Club. If you've seen that, oh my god, that's such a good movie. It's, who's in it? Sam Claflin, Douglas Booth. Who else is in it? It's like Max Irons. Love Max Irons. And like other people, but like them three are like the main ones. It gives that because they're also like boys in Oxford, like studying like with insane amounts of money. God, that's a good movie. It's a very, very underrated one. I might do that too, because I literally have not seen it in years, and it's so good. Look at my brain just spinning. But, yes, I probably look like I'm sweating. I'm so sorry. It's just so hot in here. Whew. Okay, well, I hope you guys enjoyed, and thank you so much for watching, and yeah, I will see you next week, I think. If I can, if I have ready, it'll be like the second part of A Court of Wings. Wait, not Wings. A Court of Mist and Fury, or like something else, like maybe another book. I don't know. Yes, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please do not forget to like, subscribe, comment, rate, leave a review, all that good stuff. Follow me on social media. And yeah, thank you so much, and I will see you next time. Bye.